Good afternoon, friends. Today we are going to take up one of the important neighbors of India with whom we not only have geographical contiguities but even cultural contiguities as well, right? And that is Nepal. Nepal, for a very long time was ruled by Rana dynasty, right? And it was an independent country, but there was not much difference between India and Nepal, because Nepal also is predominantly a Hindu country, right, with some minor populations of Christians, Muslims and Buddhist, Christians and Muslims, predominantly a Hindu country. And we had our cultural linkages with in Nepal. You will be surprised to know that the head priest of Pashupatinath temple is basically Maharashtrian, is not a Nepali, right? So Nepal, what is significant with Nepal is that we have a very significant treaty with Nepal called India-Nepal Treaty of 1950, right? And this is the kind of agreement with which we do not have such a treaty or such an agreement with any other country in the world, right? Because under this treaty, people from both the countries can go purchase land, do business, take up jobs, right, settle down, and sometimes even acquire citizenship. Only the thing is that Indians cannot join the government jobs in Nepal, but all other kinds of jobs are open for Indians in Nepal also. Similarly, a Nepali can come to India, acquire land, settle down, or sometimes get the citizenship, and there is separate Gorkha regiment in Indian Army, right? So this is the kind, plus for movement across the border, we neither require passport or visa. So it is something like open borders between both the countries. Why there was such an urgent need to sign this agreement? Because by that time, expansionist designs of China were already very much open. So Nepal also was worried about its freedom. India also was worried about the possible takeover of China by Nepal, of Nepal by China, right? So which has culminated in 1950 treaty. And under this treaty, India also agreed to offer protection to Nepal. And not only that, I mean, if you look at the map, I'll draw the map later, there was a certain secret clauses in this treaty. And one of the important secret clauses was that in case of a war, both the countries will support each other, right? And both the countries will provide access through its territory if India want to fight a war with China. As per the secret clause of this treaty, Nepal is supposed to provide us with access from its land. So India is also supposed to provide that kind of access. And not only that, since Nepal is a landlocked country, India provides access to Nepal for trade through Calcutta port and sometimes through Paradip port in Orissa also. So this is the kind of treaty, very rarely you will find this kind of treaty in between any two countries, whereby citizen of one country like Nepal accept certain top 3 premier services of IAS, IPS and IFS. I think a Nepali can come to India and join any kind of service as per this treaty. Indians also, as I said, they can go there, acquire land, do business, and sometimes they can get citizenship also there. So it's some sort of a free movement between the two countries. As I said, we don't require passport, we don't require visa to enter each other's country, right? This was done to preempt any possible expansionist design of China. And these were some of the contents of that treaty. And please remember, Nepal is a landlocked country with almost 3 crores population, 93rd largest country in terms of area, and 41st largest country in terms of population. It shares, if you look at Nepal, on the 3 sides, it is surrounded by India. Here you have Uttaranchal, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Bengal, and even here it is surrounded by Sikkim, right? So on the 3 sides, Nepal is surrounded by India. Here you have India, here you have Sikkim, here it is Uttaranchal, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Bengal, and here you have China, right? And please understand, Nepal is divided into 3 major regions. What are these 3 major regions? This area is called as Terai. It is one of the most fertile regions of Nepal, as well as one of the fertile regions in the world, right? And this region, lower region, is what we call as hill region, and this region is mountain region. And these 2 regions are thinly populated. This particular region is thickly populated. Though, and problem with Nepal is its demography. It is 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3 are this particular land. I think I'll have to draw the map again. If you look at this map like this, Nepal map, right? 3 regions, as I said. This is hill region, this is mountain region, mountain region, and this is Terai region. Terai region is largely inhabited by people called Madhesis. Now, who are Madhesis? Madhesis have been living there since centuries. Many call this region, what we call is Madhes, is their original homeland. But at the same times, there are Indians also. They are Indians, like people who have, and because here you have Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and they intermarry. They go from here, they come, uncle could be here, grandfather could be staying here, one brother could be here, one brother could be there. Many doctors from India have their clinics in Nepal. It is something like that, right? And they also intermarry, as I said, roti beti ka sambandh, right? What they call. They are primarily Indians. That is people from, that is why despite the fact that you have Nepali language in school, Hindi and Bhojpuri and Maithili are widely spoken language in this language of this region. And second important aspect of this region is that it is the most fertile region which produces almost 60% of Nepali output, right? And it is inhabited by almost 50% or 55% of the population, who primarily are Madhesis, right? And most important aspect of this region is that Nepal, for 90% of its trade, it is dependent on India, because as I said, on 3 sides it is surrounded by India. And one more thing which we should keep in mind is that in Nepal, plain area is there only here. Plain area means not mountains, too many mountains, valleys and all that, where transport, communication, everything is fast, swift. So that is there in this region. Whereas hilly regions, they are not plain lands and they are thinly populated, but the population is 1/3 are Madhesis, 1/3 are these hill elites, and 1/3 are, there are certain other tribes or others who are considered to be backward classes and all that in Nepal. And politics of Nepal is completely, since its inception, is dominated by hill elites. who, though Hindus, are primarily Gorkhas, right? So this was the division, original power division, I mean geographical division of Nepal. And one more compulsion of Nepal is that for its trade routes it has to depend on India, because, and that too on this Madhes region, because I said this is the only plain region in Nepal. So their trade route is through India, and and then question arises, why not from China? This region is completely hill with full of valleys and other things. Of course, China is trying to lay the road and other things, but it will not be possible for China to completely erode Nepal's dependence on India, right? As I said, 90% of Nepal's trade is through India or with India. It is only 10% through China, right? Well, with kind of China which is interfering there, the situation may change in future, but it cannot be complete, it cannot be reversed. I mean, it cannot be 80% with China and 20% with India. That is possible only when you shift Himalayas. Otherwise it is not possible. So in foreseeable future, Nepal's dependence on India is not going to go. Now there is one more classification you can do of population. As I said, 1/3 Madhesis, 1/3 hill elites, and 1/3 others. And politics, even these others feel discriminated against the domination of these hill elites, right? And hill elites do not want to forego their power. And there is a saying in Nepali, only hill people can rule. Only hill people are fit to rule. That is a saying in Nepali language. So as a result, these two sections, Madhesis, who primarily are Indians, and the others group who are called as backward classes, I mean, I'll be able to tell you the name of some of those tribes. Just let me have a look into the book so that I'll be in a position to tell you the name of those tribes, right? Tharu community, it is called as Tharu community, right? So the thing is, what is the problem? These two sections feel discriminated against by the hill elites of Nepal. Now, geographical division, I told you, and geographical compulsions of Nepal also I told you. I also told you about the demographic composition of Nepal. And one more demographic composition you can as well look is that 81.3% Hindus, 9% Buddhists, 4.4% Muslims, 1.4% Christians, and 4% others. And for a very, very long time, almost from up to 2005, Nepal was officially a Hindu state, rather the only Hindu state in the world officially. But even that has been removed from 2005 with a first or second constitution. It has become, Nepal has been declared as a secular state, right? All these statistics is essential, and Nepal shares a long border with India of 1850 kilometers, touching 5 states: West Bengal, Bihar, Sikkim, Uttar Pradesh, and Uttarakhand. As I said, on all 3 sides, Nepal is surrounded by India, right? Demography also I have told you. Then Nepal was ruled by Shah dynasty, and in 1950s, there were 3 power centers in Nepal. What were these 3 power centers? Tribhuvan, that is king, who was made as king, Tribhuvan. Then Ranas, who were holding the de facto powers, and Nepali Congress, which in turn was supported by Indian National Congress of India. Just remember 3 power centers: Tribhuvan, Ranas, and Nepali Congress, right? This arrangement continued very well for a long time, and somewhere around in the 60s, it is King Mahinder, I think, King Mahinder or Birender. Just let me have a look, right? King Mahinder became ruler of Nepal instead of Tribhuvan, right? Mahinder became ruler. and it was considered to be a constitutional monarchy with Tribhuvan as the constitutional head and Nepali Congress, I mean these people as Prime Minister and Nepali Congress contesting the elections and as members. Now Mahendra was very ambitious person. He wanted to become the de facto ruler of Nepal, and for that he thought that anyway the mainstream party, which was the ruling party in India, Indian National Congress, supported initially Tribhuvans against Ranas and Nepali Congress, right? So although the King Mahendra wanted Congress to support him in his desire to be the de facto ruler, but due to various reasons, because of their closeness with the Nepali Congress leadership, Indian government for many reasons did not do that. That was roughly the time when King Mahendra thought that why not play China card, and he started taking help from China, and India considered this to be the violation of the spirit of 1950 treaty. But anyway, King Mahendra dissolved parliament, and instead of parliament he came out with a different kind of democracy, that is panchayats. He placed panchayats directly against the political leadership of the country, right? That is how he wanted to expand his power and emerge as de facto. And with the passage of time, monarchy, Nepal literally became an absolute monarchy, and the same policies continued under King Birendra. And subsequently 3 important political groups emerged, and China always wanted some sort of a say in Nepali politics, because ultimate aim of China is to grab Nepal. I hope you, if you do not know about this, the theory of palm and 5 fingers, please hear my lecture on India-China relationship. There I have explained what China means by palm and 5 fingers. Palm is Tibet, 5 fingers are Ladakh, Nepal, Sikkim, Bhutan and Arunachal Pradesh. Entire Tibet, that is palm, they have captured. Substantial part of 1 finger, that is Ladakh, they have captured, and they want to capture Sikkim, Nepal, Bhutan as well as Arunachal Pradesh. So the thing is that China thought that it is India which has neutralized it. As a result, they found opening in the form of King Mahendra and subsequently by King Birendra as well. So China also thought that even in popular support, they must have somebody to wean away Nepalis or pit large section of Nepalese population against India, and they instigated Maoist party under the leadership of Pushpa Dahal Prachanda, right? And Maoist, but only initially Maoist party was like any other left-wing insurgent group, believing in overthrow of the state and other things, but that was not possible because China was getting leverage in Nepal only because through King, and King wouldn't have tolerated that, right? Because India anyway was supporting the political leadership in the form of Nepali Congress. So with the support of communist and tacit support of King Birendra, Maoists started becoming very powerful voice within Nepal, right? And a situation came when they became so powerful, and finally, you know, how the one of the sons of this man, Birendra, killed the entire dynasty. Some say it was the controversy of his uncle. He wanted to take over power, but ultimately he took over power, right? So his uncle, the entire family was killed and all that. Finally, Maoist and other all political parties came to a agreement with the sufficient pressure from China, and even it said pressure from Indian Communist also, that Nepal, the Maoists in Nepal agreed to participate in elections, and some sort of a coalition predominantly with Maoist at the center came to power inside Nepal. Now they came to power, but problem with Nepal is that because of its demography of as I said, one third Madhesis, one third the so-called other groups, one third hill elites, not a single workable constitution Nepal has been able to provide. There has been at least 5 or 6 constituent assemblies and 6 constitutions, and still the political instability continues in Nepal. What is the reason? Because hill elites do not want to forego their powers, right? They are quite reluctant to share powers with Madhesis who occupy this side of the region. Let me explain. Again, I'll have to draw the map of Nepal. If you look at the map of Nepal, this region, what we call is Madhes, as I said, the most fertile region and the most regions not only of Nepal but of the entire world, full of water resources and all that. Then this region is predominantly by hill elites, right? So in this region, the latest constitution, I'll tell you the important features of the latest constitution is that it divided Nepal into 8 provinces, and Madhesis feel that, and it was initially agreed that this division will be based on population, and Madhesis were having lot of hopes with that. That is, they thought that 50% of population is there in this area, so Madhes will get lot of representation and other things, but that was not done. Through the process of gerrymandering, what is called as gerrymandering, right, a new constitution was adopted on September 2015, and the Constituent Assembly was given as an extended life in Parliament to decide anything, right? So much of powers were given to the Parliament, in short to the Constituent Assembly, which even after Constitution coming into operation extended its lives and started acting as provisional Parliament, right? The same case as it happened in case of India, but that was done till Constitution did not came into operation, right? Once Constitution came into operation, there were elections and Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha were constituted, and all the powers was given to legislature. But there is a slight difference in case of Nepal. Despite completion of the constitution, the Constituent Assembly has not been dissolved. It has got the extended life to make any decision with regard to Nepal's governance. Now, some of the features of this is that, firstly, it has declared Nepal as a secular state, and there will be 8 federal units. And it is here that Madhesis feel that they are being cheated. And even in National Assembly, with a higher population, they are getting lesser seats, as a result lesser voice, and dominance of hill elites is somehow preserved by the way the constituencies are divided in terms of the new constitution, right, decided. And some of the features are that Nepal has been declared as a secular state. The conversion activities, because the elites feel that Christians are indulging in conversions, as a result they have banned conversion. Proselytizing activities is completely illegal in Nepal. Then cow is declared as a national animal, right? Death sentence has been banned, and to flaunt their democratic credentials, death sentence is constitutionally banned. So of course these are very peripheral points. What is significant point is that as per this constitution, any Nepali woman married to a non-Nepali, the offsprings, the children of such a mother will be losing all citizenship rights. Now this is one condition which has enraged the Madhesis, because not now, since hundreds of years they have been marrying with Indians. In fact, they are Indians. As I said, there is they intermarry with each other. As a result, it is in future it is going to completely marginalize Madhesis. So this is one aspect of the constitution which is not at all acceptable to Madhesis, because as I said, the Madhesis are marrying across the borders since centuries, right? So as a result, this aspect of their citizenship is being opposed tooth and nail by Nepalis. See, all this background of domestic politics is very, very essential in order to understand the current scenario of India-Nepal relationships. Now coming to India-Nepal relationship, for a very, very long time we had very good relations with Nepal, especially right, and Indo-Nepal Treaty of 1950, open borders between the two countries, right? Then India somehow went out of the way to befriend Nepal, I told you, right? And Nepal is landlocked country, provides facilities to India provides facilities at Calcutta, right? And sometimes when Nepal tried to act too smart with India, somewhere in during the time of Rajiv Gandhi, India wanted to arm twist and Nepal and imposed a kind of blockage in this region. And as I said, for its trade, for its petrol, for all other resources, Nepal is badly dependent, because it is from this region their trade passes through. As a result, Nepal started looking towards China. Now question could be asked, sir, had the then political leadership of India entered into an agreement with King Mahendra and allowed him to become the de facto ruler, which anyway he became, it was a tactical error committed by Indian leadership. Perhaps we should have sided with King of Nepal. In fact, that was also one of the demands of the then opposition party Bharatiya Janasangh, right, which subsequently became BJP. Especially the Janasangh leadership of that time, whether it was Atal Bihari Vajpayee or Vijay Raje Scindia of Gwalior family. In fact, some of the members of Gwalior family are married into the house of King of Nepal, since it's a princely family, and vice versa also. So they have that special relationship with monarchy of Nepal. Well, perhaps that could have prevented Chinese interference, but maybe the calculations of Government of India were different. I will not call it as a blunder which Nehru committed by by taking Kashmir issue to Security Council, or refusing to accept the permanent membership of Security Council and all that. But certainly, I mean, it could have been error of judgment, right? Because sometimes it becomes very, very difficult especially when you do not have wisdom of the hindsight. Now after so many years we can say whether that was wrong or right, but perhaps the person who is at the decision making, I mean, by the standards of the time, perhaps that was the right decision, right? So the thing is that after that, India, please remember, never imposed any kind of blockage on Nepal. Rather, India went out of its way to help Nepal, to cultivate Nepal, right, by giving access to Calcutta port. It extended the access to Paradip, and flight access it is giving through Bombay. India is trying to built infrastructure of Nepal heavily. Their national police academy at Panauti is being built by India. All these kinds of help India, and whenever there is natural calamity, especially earthquake, it is Nepal which looks up to India for help. But as I said, there is an anti-India element also in Nepal, especially these hill elites who, with the active cooperation of Chinese, will always keep this anti-India feeling alive in a section of population, because they feel that India is trying to dominate them, India is trying to play the role of a big brother, right? So we have both love and hate relationship with Nepal depending on situation. But after that, 2015 blockage was done primarily by Madhesis, because their demands, their aspirations were not reflected in the constitution, especially as I told you about the that aspect of the constitution, the 5th or 6th constitution, whereby a Nepali woman married to a non-Nepali is, I mean, their children will forego all the benefits of citizenship, right? So it is Madhesis who imposed the blockage of 2015, and there is a section of Nepali leadership and their population also which believes that it is India which is instigating Madhesis, right, from across the border. And as I said, it is completely porous border. They intermarry, they interdine, they have close relationship, family relationship with each other. So they think that even if it is not directly done by India, it is India which is instigating Madhesis for this blockage, and Nepal suffers heavily. That is also one of the reasons why they are looking up to China. Now, what are the important aspects between India and Nepal? As I said, Nepal landlocked country many times, right? Cultural ties between those two countries are very, very close. Then what are the concerns of India? Growing Chinese influence in Nepal. Obviously, it is very too obvious. India views this as violation of letter and spirit of bilateral treaty between India and Nepal. Human trafficking is huge from Nepal into India. India's official blockage of 89-90, right, which literally brought Nepal on its knees, because without, as per the treaty of 1950, even if they wanted to import arms from any other country, it will pass through Indian territory and India will be informed. Whereas Nepal did not do that, and as a result India had to impose blockage. They imported arms from Chinese. Then Madhesis issue. This is the crux of the problem between India and Nepal, and unless Madhesis issue is settled, right, by a proper amendment of the constitution or by a fresh constitution which respects the federal spirit, a true federalism and sufficient devolution of power to this region of Madhes, what we call as Madhes region, right, and accepting representation based on population, or at least trying to do the delimitation of constituencies in such a way that it at least, I mean, is fair to Madhesis, right, and other groups, especially the backward class group in Nepal, and which does not go out of the way to preserve the interest of hill elites or preserve the domination of hill elites. I think till then India-Nepal relations are not going to improve. As long as Madhesis problems are solved, and Madhesis problem will not be solved till Nepal succeeds in evolving a constitution which is acceptable to all the sections, and till then, till the hill elites are willing to share power with other groups, right? Whereas as the situation stands, that does not seem to be the possibility, because somehow hill elites want to maintain their dominance in power structure and in governance, right? And then Madhesis issues, as I said, they constitute 33% population, and speak languages like Maithili, Bhojpuri, Awadhi, Hindi, right? They have roti beti rishta, socio-economic relationship with India, and want a Hindu state in Nepal, right? Then problem of Nepali people in Assam and Darjeeling, I'll come to that later. Treatment meted out to Indian citizen in Nepal, ISI activities in Nepal. Please remember the kidnapping of Indian Airlines plane to Kandahar was done from Kathmandu airport, right? For a very long time, Nepal has served as a conduit point for many anti-India activities, especially by ISI, like kidnapping of the hijacking of that aeroplane, sending anti-India elements into India, inserting fake currency into India, right? All this was used. Nepalese territory was used for a very, very long time for all this. Then there are 6 million Nepali workers working in India, whom we normally call as Gurkhas. They work in as watchmen or as security guards all over the country. Right. Then 2/3, 75% of Nepal's annual trade is with India, only 10% is with China. And these are the different tribes of Nepal: Khambus, Gurangs, Tamangs, Limbus, right? They are of Mongoloid race, so they look quite different from Madhesis, who mostly have Indian features because they are Indians, right? Then there is one more dispute with Nepal, not a very big dispute, a very small tract of land called Kala Pani. Now where is Kala Pani? If you look at the state of Uttaranchal, if you travel from, say, place called Kathgodam to Nainital, from Nainital to Almora to Dunagiri and further up, right, you will get Darchula border. And in Darchul, near Darchula border, there is a small tract of land, which is 75 square kilometers of land, and there you have Lipu Lake also, which Nepal feels is a territory belonging to them, which India grabbed in, of course, that is their claim, that India grabbed in 1962, and it is a very important tri-junctions where borders of, it is somewhere here you have state of Uttaranchal, here you have places like Dunaguri, Almora, right? If you go from here you have China, Nepal, it is a tri-junction, here you have Kala Pani, right? So this is with India, very small tract of land, 75 square kilometers, it is under Indian control since 1962, right? And Nepal feels that, and Nepal for a very, very long time, when they were not defeated by Britishers, the Gorkha soldiers captured a large tract of land. In fact, they consider the land up to Nainital as theirs, right? But of course that's a bit far-fetched, but a small dispute. And now with under Chinese instigation, of course they never raised that dispute for a very, very long time, but now under Chinese instigation, especially after that Galwan Valley disputes, Nepal, especially their present prime minister, who is nothing but a pet of a puppet of Chinese leadership, is trying to raise that issue once again by sending their army or trying to kill some Indian civilians on the border and other things. But I don't think they are, even in their dreams, they will be able to take back Kala Pani from India, because when Britishers defeated them and signed a treaty with Nepal, right, the Kala Pani was something like a no man's land, which was taken over, no man's lands, and in the original map it was shown as Indian territory. As a result, Kala Pani, and if you want to know the originally the case, well, a large tracts of Uttarakhand land, especially near Kumaon region, was part of Nepal, and which India, which Britishers felt it is Nepal which grabbed it, and somewhere in 1890s Britishers took over from Nepal. So this is, of course, it's a very minor dispute between India and Nepal. Since the land has such a strategic location, it is tri-junction where you have border of China and all that, keeping in view the security interest of India, I don't think India will any time is going to concede this demand of Nepal. So these are important points of differences. As I said, areas of cooperation are huge. It is like India, it is 80% a Hindu country. We have strong cultural links, right? Many of Indians believe that their Shiv Bhakti is not complete with 12 Jyotirlingas. One has to go to Pashupatinath temple in Nepal also, and many Hindus from India go there. We don't require visa, we don't require passport, and their infrastructure, their road links, their lateral roads, arterial roads, especially in Terai region. As I told you, this is the Terai region. Constantly I am drawing the map. Is being built by India, connectivity to India, right? We have train service, we have bus services, we have all kinds of services between India and Nepal. Transport and communication is high, not only now but since long time, right? There are almost 350 large and small projects that are being operationalized in Nepal with the help of India. Then to facilitate foreign trade, as I said, it is a landlocked country. They are getting access to Visakhapatnam port also, right? Besides getting access through Calcutta and Paradip port, India has built the National Police Academy called Panauti Karve in Nepal. Their personals are being trained by India, right? Nepali students get scholarship by India. Then Indian companies like Dabur, Hindustan Lever, Asian Paints, Bajaj Auto, ITC, plus one of their largest chain of hotels, Oberoi Salty, belongs to an Indian, that is Oberoi Group, right? Then other sectors are post telecom, village, urban development, traffic management, forestry, geological, horticultural, veterinary science. Their multi-purpose projects are being built by India, like Panchaveshwar, Mahakali. These are all rivers. Dams are being built by India. Plus one more group you can add here is of Baba Ramdev, that is Patanjali has huge investment now in Nepal. In fact, his close associate Balkrishna Maharaj is a Nepali, right? So these are all areas of cooperation between India and Nepal. Integrated checkposts are being built, rail lines are being built, border infrastructure is being created by India within Nepal with the help of India, joint military exercises, cooperation in areas like tackling fake currency note, apprehending terrorists, criminals on both sides of the border, right? Then India is helping Nepal in capacity building. Their armed forces are getting equipments as well as training in India, right? Then India obviously is the largest trading partner of Nepal in this region, or why this region, the entire world. There are more than 150 operating Indian ventures in Nepal, right? Logistical assistance is given. 3,000 scholarships Nepali students get every year to pursue their engineering, medicine, dairy, agriculture and other courses in India, right? Now after Modi's visits, cooperation in 4 areas: connectivity, culture, cooperation, constitution. Since, as I said, one of the fundamental problems in Nepal is that they are unable to come out with a constitution which is acceptable to all sections of Nepalese population. Now they are taking the help of India in preparing such a constitution, right? And 1 billion line of credit, power trading agreement, assistance for construction of motorable bridge over Mahankali river. Then PM announced 2,500 kgs of sandalwood to Pashupatinath temple. The Dharamshala of that temple is being built by Indians. Construction of feeder roads to Terai region. Then India is developing a Buddhist circuit also, that is Lumbini and Kushinagar in UP, right? Kushinagar, Sarnath, then Gaya in Nepal, right from Lumbini, which is in Nepal. And Nepal has agreed to help India in building the Ramayana circuit, that is from Janakpur to Ayodhya. This is the kind of cooperation we see. All round cooperation between India and Nepal. The crux of the problem is Madheshis issues, and their main demand is autonomy and proper federalism and proper representation, so that Madhesis also can become important voice, so that Madhesis can get their rightful place or rightful voice in national politics, right? So this is between India and Nepal, right? As it is said, federalism is not simply the decentralization of political power, it has become a powerful symbol of a wider agenda of inculcation, which encompasses other institutional reforms to guarantee ethnic proportional representation, right? So you must remember the importance of this sentence, because federalism is not only an arrangement to share power, it is a very important instrument for propitiating the politics of inculcation and representation, right? So if Nepal can accommodate this, I think to a great extent problem of Madhesis will be solved, and there will hardly be, except growing Chinese influence, there is hardly any point of discord between India and Nepal. Even Kala Pani issue can be resolved quite amicably, right? And Nepal has failed experiment with the constitution. I told you where exactly the problem lies, right? And like Balochistan, like Bangladesh, which it felt, Madhesis also feels that because this, as I said, is the resource rich, most fertile region of Nepal, so Madhesis feel that they are not getting their due. The surplus is extracted from here and invested in this region, right? And problem with Nepal, the internal problem with Nepal is that despite 6 constitution, the spirit of democracy and federalism, Nepal political leadership is unable to internalize. Once that happens, I think there will not be much of a problem between Nepal and India. As I said, democracy means much more than election. In Nepal, an absence of sound institutions has been compounded by constitution making without political consensus or proper attention to the interest of minority groups, right? Constitutional mess is at the root of violent protest and political upheaval. I mean, this is not my statement, this is what one of the security expert Brahmachalani has to say this, right? So all these are the reasons. To cut the long story short, better representation to Madhesis and other groups, right? True federalism which accommodates the aspirations of minority groups, representation and a voice. If these things are taken care of by the constitution, I don't think there is much of a problem between India and Nepal. As I said, Hill elites have always dominated power in Nepal. The new constitution, as I said, divides it into 7 parts, and which leaves Madhesis quite powerless in large tracts of Madhes region. Again, I am drawing the map. Madhes region, this is the Madhes region, right? And they want sizable kind of autonomy for this region. So mistrust of India flows from the tensions generated by Nepal's inability to address or accommodate diverse ethnic groups. And moreover, you have to view from the fact that Nepal has so much of hydro potential, water potential, that it can supply and sell water to India and can become a rich country. Whereas you'll be surprised to know that despite so much of water resources, there are power shortages in Nepal, right? Again, because of lack of political stability, and lack of political stability is that inability of Nepalese leadership to share power with different minority groups or evolve workable constitutions that accommodates federal and democratic aspirations of other sections of Nepalese population, right? Right, as I said, as Brahmachalani, one of the security experts on security and defense expert says, today Nepal produces less than 800 megawatts of electricity from all energy sources for its 3 million citizens. Power shortages are common even in Kathmandu. It imports electricity from India, right? Whereas what is potential of Nepal? 8,300 megawatts of potential. It is not even producing 1% of its potential. It can even export electricity. Nepal could turn water into clear gold generating hydro dollars to fuel its development. This is what Brahmachalani has to say about Nepal. In fact, these notes are simply copy from one of his famous article on India-Nepal relations, right? Then the issues are, India has, as I said, its own Monroe Doctrine, because India feels this is South Asia's Indo-centric region, and India does not tolerate involvement of any extra regional power in this region. India feels it is capable enough to solve any bilateral disputes in this region, right? So we will see this when we study South Asia, why India feels this way. So this is the Monroe Doctrine of India. As the President Monroe gave this doctrine, he made it very clear the American region, whether it is South America, Latin America, Central America, it is America which is going to decide or settle disputes. It will not tolerate interference from any other extra regional power. By that he meant England, Spain, Portugal or France. So similarly, India also has its own Monroe Doctrine. Now, to cut the long story short, problem between India and Nepal are not much. The crux of the problem is Madheshis issues. If that is the solved to the satisfaction of the local group, otherwise India-Nepal relations are very close. You can see the bilateral investment, bilateral trade. I gave you all the long statistics of the kind of investment which India, the kind of economic cooperation which is taking place between India and Nepal, right? So then China factor, Chinese interference is quite disproportionate, is not to the liking of India, right? And once Madheshis issues is solved, I think India will be able to succeed in curtailing Chinese influence also, because today China is offering port facilities. So Nepal thought that India is trying to blackmail us because we don't have access to sea. As a result, they are looking up to China, but that will not work out. Why I am telling you? Because China has promised to provide sea route to Nepal through its ports called Tinjan. You will be surprised to know that China, if it wants to sell its products, has to use Calcutta port today, right? So, and with such a long route, the cost of the product becomes totally uneconomical and unacceptable. Take for example, a kilo of potatoes. If India wants to send to Nepal, it will become 50 rupees, maximum 50 rupees a kg. But suppose if Nepal were to import it from China, then it has to travel through all such a long route, South China Sea, then through that Bay of Bengal, come to Calcutta, then enter through road route. So 1 kg of potatoes may become 600 rupees kg, right? So as I said, Nepal's dominance or geographical compulsions for Nepal are such that it will have to depend on India, and for that it will have to improve relations with India. This is the compulsion. Now you may say, sir, recently China has provided Tinjan port in China near Shanghai to Nepal, but that is almost more than 2000 kilometers from the mainland of Nepal, whereas Calcutta will be hardly 300 kilometers, right? Calcutta port. So obviously it will be economically a suicidal idea for Nepal to depend on Tinjan port of China. Right, so these are important issues between India and Nepal. As I said, the crux of the problem between India and Nepal is the issue of Madhesis. If problem of Madhesis is solved to the satisfaction of not India, to the satisfaction of Madhesis, then I don't think there is not much of a problem between India and Nepal. Take for example, there could be some problem in case of Sikkim, because almost 58% of the population are Nepalis there, and in Darjeeling. Darjeeling, with the creation of Gorkhaland Development Council, and the mainstream party, that is BJP, is open to the idea of giving even statehood to Darjeeling, which is a very small region, but that's not acceptable to Mamata Banerjee, who happens to be the Chief Minister of West Bengal, because Darjeeling generates lot of tourism revenue for state of West Bengal. That's not acceptable. And Darjeeling has a special case. Why? Because even when Britishers returned many areas to Sikkim, it retained Darjeeling because of tea production and other things. As a result, Government of India already has provided a sufficient autonomy to that Gorkhaland region, because that largely inhabited by Nepali Gorkhas. So there is not much of a problem. And even in case of Sikkim, problem is more with between Gorkhas and Lepchas. Lepchas are primarily people who have migrated from Tibet region, right? So there is not, I mean, if I look between India and Nepal, there is all-round cooperation. There is not much reason of contention except Madhesis issues. If that is resolved amicably, I don't think Kala Pani dispute is not much. In fact, Nepal never raised it since last 40 years. It was only raised recently, after that too under the instigation of China. But once Madhesis issues is solved, India will successfully cut down the influence of China. And as I said, there is not much between India and Nepal, because there is all round, after that demonetization, Notebandi, even ISI activities and fake currency was hit very hard. So even that is not a main issue now between India. Anyway, there is a porous border, and ISI activity is not what it used to be earlier. So there is not much dispute between India and Nepal, right? Except the issue of Madhesis. Issue of Nepalis in India is not much, because many Nepalis are working in India. We have separate Gorkha regiment. Gorkhas are allowed to take up any government job, acquire property, right? So, and even with regard to Sikkim, the problem is more between Nepalis, and Nepali means the Gorkhas there, and Lepchas. And even with regard to Darjeeling, problem is more with regard to the state government and Gorkhas, rather than with Government of India or Gorkhas, right? So there is not much. Once the Madhesis issues is taken care of, I tell you, 99% of the dispute with Nepal will go. Because please understand, there is something called compulsions of geography, and compulsions of geography are highly tilted in favor of India, right? Even if China wants, China cannot replace the Nepalese dependence on India, right? As I said, for that you will have to shift Himalayas, right? And that is, I don't think that is possible in any of our lifetimes. So now, coming back to, as I said, India does not like growing Chinese influence, because India has its own Monroe Doctrine. See, besides, once Madheshi issue is solved, I don't think there is any important point of discord between India and Nepal. Now, what are the possible questions? Questions could be on Madheshi's issues. One question could be on 1950 treaty, or question could be on growing Chinese influence, right? For this, you can see the latest statistics into newspapers and all that. Once these things are solved, I don't think there is much between India and Nepal. Thank you.